you're switching on your phone's light and you're pointing, you go to the sun on a middle of the day, you try to increase the brightness of the sun. Impossible.
And I'm just gonna play this song right now, and we're gonna try to understand this song, and we're gonna examine it biblically. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning into our channel. We have Brother Jithin with us. Brother, thank you so much for joining us again. Let's jump right into the question. The first question is, what is the aseity of God? This whole aseity of God. It sounds very complex. So can you just explain that to us?
Yeah. Again, thank you for having me. We are looking into the attributes of God. Last session, we were thinking about why we need to look into the attributes of God, and it's good that we right away move into the aseity of God, which is probably the first one we ought to look into. Aseity of God. The word aseity is not popular at all, because I'm sure many of you would understand what it is when I describe it. Rather, even though you have not heard the title, heard this phrase "Aseity of God," it means the self existence of God. Self existence of God. That means God has all of life within Himself. He has being. The attribute of being within Himself. Um, or to understand that, we need to compare with ourselves. There was a time in the past when I did not exist, when you did not exist, but there was never a time, if you can call it time, when God did not exist. There was always God. God was always there. That's why when Moses asked God his name, he was saying, I am who I am. I am eternally the great I am. In fact, God did not give his personal name right up front, because Moses was probably asking, uh, we have a lot of named gods in Egypt.
Mm.
Can I know your name too? So God is saying, before you add my name along with the rest of those names, know my being before you know my name. So um, a city of God implies talks about the self existence of God. He has life within himself. Uh, God doesn't depend on anything or anyone outside of himself for his existence, or for him to continue to exist, or to come to exist. He never came to existence. um, yeah, so that's the essence of so that's a primary attribute of God, a non-communicable attribute of God. That
Uh,
means we don't share that attribute.
uh, uh. A follow-up question is, what are communicable attributes and what are non-communicable attributes?
Yeah. For our study purpose, theology is all about making distinguishing one
Mm.
from another.
Yeah.
uh, Theologians distinguish attributes of God. Certain attributes they call as communicable attributes of God, and some as
Mm.
non-communicable attributes of God.
Yeah.
So non-communicable attributes are those attributes that belong to God alone. First one, aseity of God. uh, we don't share any element of aseity. But other attributes like truthfulness of God, love of God, wisdom of God, being created in the image of God, we have a small faint measure of those attributes in us. um, in comparison to God, we share that attribute with God, but in totally different volumes, measures, degree, in different in terms of its fruitfulness, all of that. But we share certain attributes of God.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for that. That was brilliant. Now let's go back to the topic. So thank you so much. Even as you shared about how God is self-sufficient and He doesn't need anyone. Uh, I've once heard this from a preacher. Even as he was sharing this to the congregation, he said, um, when Jesus died on the cross, He was actually feeling bad because he was alone in heaven. He wanted us, so he died on the cross. I mean, it's in a way it is right, but when he said he was alone and he needed us, that's where things became a little messy. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, when the moment we use the word God needed something, that's we are stepping onto very dangerous uh, areas, because God is self-sufficient. He needs nothing. Let me look into my notes, and I want um, to read to you what A.W. Pink writes about this.
Hmm,
This is quite a long passage, but I think it's very important for us to understand.
sure.
Uh, there was a time, if time it could be called, when God, in the unity of his nature, though subsisting equally in three divine persons, dwelt all alone. In the beginning, God, as Genesis says. There was no heaven where his glory is now particularly manifested. There was no earth to engage his attention. There were no angels to hymn his praise, no universe to be upheld by the power of his word. There was nothing, no one but God, and that not for a day, a year, or an age, but from everlasting. During a past eternity, God was alone, but he writes, God was self contained, self sufficient, self satisfied, in need of nothing. Had a universe, had angels, had human beings be necessary for him in any way, they all would have been called into existence from all eternity. The very creation of them added nothing to God essentially. That essentially means pertaining to his essence. Nothing was added. He changes not. Therefore, his glory can be neither augmented or diminished. God was under no constraint, no obligation, no necessity to create. That he chose to do so was purely a sovereign act on his part, caused by nothing outside of himself, determined by nothing but his own mere good pleasure. For he works all things after the counsel of his will, as the word says. That he did create was simply his manifested glory. So he was always self sufficient, self satisfied, self contained within the community of the Trinity. So God never needed anything. It was simply out of his will that he chose to create. So never speak of God's need for anything.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Uh, yeah. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
again, let me interrupt. But since you talked about cross, but but once God, according to his will, decided to save mankind before the foundations of the world,
Yeah.
then it became necessary that he should send his son.
Yeah.
He needed to send his son, because but the need never came from outside himself. It came from within himself, from his
Yeah.
own character, his own sovereign choice, will.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
Very true. Thank you so much, brother. So my next question will be, um, does God need us to glorify him? Why does God need us to worship him? Or does he need us to? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Again, God, when you talk about the glory of God, uh, again we need to make this a distinction. um, you talk about the essential glory of God, the intrinsic glory of God. You cannot add anything to it, because uh, it's like you're switching on your phone's light, and you're pointing, you go to the sun on a middle of the day. You try to increase the brightness of the sun. Impossible, because uh, you cannot add to the glory of God. But to glorify God, it's when we talk about glorifying God, what we mean is the manifested glory of God. uh, See, glory of God, because I brought in the imagery of sun. uh, holiness of God, it can be compared to the essential attributes of God. The being of God, the essence of God, can be compared to the energy, the heat in the sun. What is happening in the sun, the energy, the reactions, and the heat, the energy there. And and the glory of God is His holiness becoming public. The Isaiah says, um, the whole earth is full of His glory. God is holy, and the whole earth is not full of His holiness but His glory. So when we see God's holiness, God's attributes as we see the glory of God. It's like the rays of the sun reveal to us what sun is like. So it's a manifested glory. So when I reflect God's glory, when others see the the glory of God, when I see the beauty of God, the majesty of God in and through, in my life, through my life, by any means, God is glorified in and through me.
Yeah, true.
Nothing happens to what He actually is, but to that person, he sees God in a more glorious way. So that's regarding the glory of God. So when God says worship Him, or glorify Him, it's not when we sing a song. He's not more. He doesn't become more glorious. He is glorious. We see Him more glorious.
True, true, very true, man. I think I've heard this song before by 10th Avenue North, I guess. The song's name is called Control, where the chorus goes like, God, you don't need me, but somehow you want me. Oh, how you love me. And that's a brilliant, you know, uh, chorus.
Yeah,
So, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, brother. So, my follow up question will be, if God doesn't need us, then why is He asking us to go and share the gospel to people? He can just do it in a snap, right?
absolutely, absolutely. God never runs out of ideas. You know, deliverance will come for Israel, but as He told Esther, you are going to lose your opportunity to take part in the work that God is
Wow.
doing.
Yeah, true.
So sharing gospel is, it's we are God's children, and we are given the great privilege of being involved in the Father's business. What more better job to do? So it's a great privilege. Uh, it's it That's God. It's God in His sovereign will uh, decided to use certain means for everything. So
Mm,
the preaching of the gospel is a means that God has. He could have announced the whole gospel to the angels, but I want to bring it in a very personal way here, because none of the angels could say Jesus died for me, but you
yeah,
and I can say that I was a sinner. This, I mean, to our friends we can really say, how my past, and this is what God has done. This is what God through Christ has done in my life. So maybe we alone can make it personal, but God is sovereign, and it is in His sovereignty itself He has planned this means that His children would take part in His work.
true, true, very true, brother. Thank you for sharing that. So, now we're gonna do something very different. I'm just gonna pick a song, and I'm just gonna play this song right now, and we're gonna try to understand this song, and we're gonna examine it biblically. Okay, all right? Okay.
You didn't want heaven without us. So, Jesus, you brought heaven down.
So, like we
My
heard right
sin
now,
was
the
great,
chorus
but
goes like,
greater
"You didn't want heaven without us, so Jesus, you brought heaven down." And goes like, "My sin was greater, your love was greater. What could separate us now?" When I was trying to understand this, I found the first two lines a little disturbing. So, what are your thoughts on that, brother?
Yeah, as we were discussing, uh, when you when you when you when you when you sing this song, if the problem with songs is you don't get an exposition along with the songs often.
Yeah,
So there's a possibility that you can interpret it uh, to the left or to the right. So if by you didn't want heaven without us, if we the whole issue is we are overloaded with man-centered theology. So when all your teaching around you is that you are the center of the universe, you tend to think of this verse as yeah, I'm so important, and God is so dependent on me. God wants me so that he can fulfill his attribute of love. With in that context, maybe this can be misinterpreted. So this can be interpreted as God need he needs us so that some element of his that he's lacking is fulfilled. But on the other hand, if we can use the same lyrics if we have the right thinking. We can, yes, God never, he is uh, he is complete in himself, he is self-sufficient, he doesn't need me. But out of his sovereign choice, he it was his will that he would save me. And once he decided to save me, uh, our my sin and your sin, our sins were so horrible that he had to send his son down
yeah,
and redeem us. So yeah, so yeah,
right,
we need to
yeah, true,
have our thinking right
yeah, yeah,
when it comes to such
yeah, yeah,
lyrics.
yeah. Thank you, brother. I think the first verse and the first chorus and the rest of the song was really rooted in God's word. It
Absolutely,
starts with
absolutely.
your word in the beginning. God talks about God was self-existent. He was existing even before time began, and it goes. And I found the second verse a little messy. That's the reason why I just picked this. So I'm gonna ask a difficult question now. Will you
Yeah,
sing this song? Ah, right, right.
yeah, please, please, please.
Yeah. Will you sing this song in your church if you're the worship leader?
uh, uh, yeah, I would, because I have already sung the song. But I would definitely uh, make things clear what the
Yeah.
song means.
True.
And I would like, this is a Hillsong song, right? So
Yeah.
I think I have to uh, say it right away that I disagree with many of the things that are happening there. Um, that is happening right now. It was not always the case there,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
things have changed. But this is a very good song, and because taking the whole song, I would
Yeah.
like to give the benefit of doubt in favor of the author for these
Yeah.
two lines.
Yeah.
The only thing is it can be misinterpreted,
True.
primarily because the overall teaching around is not healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that's
Yeah. True.
where I would put it.
Maybe giving an introduction to the song and then singing it
Uh,
might
Correct.
help. And again, discernment needed. If there is a weaker brother, and if that's gonna make him listen to those, I mean, it works both the ways. So yeah, discernment. Yeah, thank you so much, brother, for that. And my final question will be: if God is self-sufficient, uh, how can we as Christians respond?
Thank you for that, for asking that question, because um, theology is fruitful only when it leads to good doxology and good praxis. That means when it leads us to worship and a good sanctified living, obedient living. Uh, Maybe the first and the foremost application, the most important application of knowing that God is self sufficient, self God, the Aseity of God is that it is the confidence that we can have in trusting him. you know, think of a situation, I am in a need, I am in deep trouble, and I go to God, and he is not self-sufficient, and he has to refer my case to another to a different authority, somewhere there, whom we have no access. uh, that's not the case. you know Romans 11:36 talks about, it says God is the source of everything, he's the means, he's the end of everything. To him, for through him and for him everything exists. um, See, he doesn't have to refer our case to anyone else. He is self-sufficient. So our prayers can be submitted in total trust that he is able to do everything, and he is able to do the best for us. He is able to, if the answer is yes or no, it will be always for our best, because he knows everything. He was before everything, and not he is not dependent on anything outside of himself. So that's probably the confidence that I can have in this God, is probably the most important application.
Do you feel unequipped to talk to your friends about Jesus? Do you want to know more about God and His Word? Are you struggling with sin? And do you desire to pursue a holy life? Then this channel is for you.